Hi, Ginger. This is Aaron Edelheit.
Hi, I've actually been saying your name all week on the radio. I've been saying it correctly. I'm glad I saw the pronunciation on the press release and I was like, wow, I'm glad I was pronouncing that right.
Well, thank you for saying my name on the radio. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been really excited about this interview. I have this has been a big area for me. I know you've been through a journey to find out what the Sabbath is to you and how it affects you. And in the last probably 5 years, I've taken so much more seriously the Sabbath. It's so much harder in the technology world to do that. So I was excited about your book and I've started reading. I'm not done, but I'm excited and thank you for doing the interview. Um, First, can you tell us a bit about your background and kind of how you got led up to doing a book about the Sabbath, about the hard break?
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. And you know, I'm a workaholic, and for some reason, I am driven. And so, part of the reason I wrote this book is really just to remind myself why the Sabbath is so important. Um, Not only for my own personal well-being, for my family, but also for my business,
Yeah.
and for me to be productive in the long term and to kind of achieve the goals that I want to achieve. And so I started this really, I kind of backed into it after I hit a breaking point and realized that working all the time and being connected to technology all the time was not working. And so I started, you know, kind of observing a Sabbath. Really, and at first, all I could do was, like 8 hours, where I would turn it off right before I went to sleep, and then I try, to make it, to like noon or 1 the next day. That was a struggle. I was so addicted to working and technology, being connected all the time. And finally, after a couple of weeks and then into a month, I started stretching it out. Finally, I could do the whole day. And I found that it just really transformed my life. And that by observing the Sabbath, suddenly my business life started getting better. I started being able to sustain and really think creatively. And that's why in 2008, I started a side business where I started buying foreclosed homes, fixing them up and renting them out. And I started with 16 homes and eventually grew that to 2,500 single family home rentals. And 3 years
Wow.
ago, we sold it to a publicly traded real estate investment trust.
Wow.
And that was a crazy experience. And I could, we grew 10 times in 1 year. It would not have been possible if I didn't turn completely off from Friday night to Saturday night and remind myself that I was Aaron and not like CEO Aaron or the person responsible for all of these investors' money. And then I had time to process and really be with my wife and my family. And I think that it saved me. It made me better. It enabled me to see the business through the ups and downs. And after I came out of that, almost immediately after I sold the company, I asked myself, I saw a lot of work behavior when I was running the company, and I just said, I really have to spread the message of this. And so
Yeah.
I started looking for other examples. And that's the genesis of the book, really.
Well, and it's something that you think about. I've told my kids before, if God made the world in 6 days and still took a day to rest, how much more do you qualify for, you know, needing a rest? Our bodies need it way more than God does, but he still took that time. So it wasn't that he couldn't sustain himself, but it was important for if he took the Sabbath and took that day of rest, it obviously is important to us. And I think it's cool that you're delving into more like what are all the benefits because it is so hard to unplug even for
Yes.
an evening. Technology has made
Yes.
keeping the Sabbath so much harder. So when it
So
came,
just a comment
go
on
ahead.
that is,
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day, is how arrogant are we to think that God needs rest, but we don't?
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, it's just like such a kind of silly thing if you think about it. That especially since we're made in His image, that we would not require. And so the reason that I wrote this is that it's a natural. It's kind of like this natural defense that if your priest or if you're someone in your church community came to you and said, I'm really worried about you. I think you should take a break. You should take a Sabbath, or your spouse or your parents or friends, because the first reaction is, oh, you don't understand. You don't know what work life is like. You don't know how busy I am, and that's the first offense. I know, because that used to be me. And so the real goal of the book was to say, hey, not only can you take a Sabbath, but it can actually be the key to your long-term success. And that's why I profile or a wonderful organization like Chick-fil-A that did $9 billion in sales, and the average Chick-fil-A does 4 times the revenue of the average KFC, even though KFC is open every day.
Yeah.
And I profile people across states, across industries, almost every industry you can imagine who are achieving success at the highest level, to say it can be the key to your long-term success.
Well, because people are so burnt out, that their jobs, there's so much more demand because we can have things in little nanobites. We can get information quicker. We can achieve more with less. Then we're expected to do more and excel more. And the pressure, you add that to your family, and you can't even
Yes.
kind of key down with your family at all. And I think I love that, it says the case for a 24/6 lifestyle, and we need to just kind of like budgeting our money to God, like it just needs to come off the top, and the rest will work itself out. We have to just take that day and get that rest, because it is a full everything that God tells us to do is good, but we don't always know the depth of it sometimes. And this is a way that we can see it was not only just a commandment, but He did it for our own good, because He knew that the key to our family and work and personal success in every way is part of this. And I'm curious. So how did you and your family try to turn off the noise, the social media, and the technology? How did you guys work with that? That's hard for me.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And so I actually started it before I met my wife. So
Oh,
it
wow.
was easier to start, but I think the first thing you can do is just to take baby steps. Is to recognize I don't think you should jump in with both feet. I think you should try to take baby steps, kind of leg into this. But to me, it's all about trying to think about how you can integrate it into your life. So let me just give you like one small example of how occasionally, and I have 3 small children. God has blessed me with 3 small children. 2 of them have some health issues. I'm very lucky that they're doing well, but there have been a couple of times in the last 4 or 5 years where, because of health reasons, my wife and I have had to be separated, and we did need to be in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we did is we switched phones. And so there's nothing on my wife's phone that I can use that is even remotely about my business or me.
Oh,
None of my social media settings are on her phone,
right.
and vice versa. So part of the idea of taking a hard break is just to think kind of creatively about how, if you do need to stay in touch, you start with baby steps. Maybe you don't do a whole day, but you just do a morning. But then if you do need to be in touch, like how can you be in touch, but then resist the temptation. Because one of the things that we have to realize is some of the smartest and brightest people out there have been actively working on your attention. Their companies are valued on, and they make their money by how much time you spend on social media or your interactions on the internet, what you read. So they're actively trying to, come up with the greatest subject materials or engage you with notifications that you feel compelled and kind of addicted to because it releases like a dopamine hit in your brain.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why the title is The Hard Break, is because you kind of need to give yourself this little space. And so part of it is just understanding that. And then another part is just preparing. Like, what will it look like? What do I need to do the next day? Or, how could people get in touch with me if need be? Or if I'm planning, I know this sounds crazy in today's world, but you may remember there used to be a time when you would tell people, oh, I'll meet you at this restaurant at 1 p.m. And that meant you would meet them at the restaurant at 1 p.m.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But now there's all these texts and everything, and it feels so strange to say, well, I'll be here. Because people are so used to, like, changing plans or texting or I'll be late. You know what I find is that when I tell people I'm going to be somewhere and I'm there, they tend to show up because they know they can't get in touch with me, but they know where I'll be.
Right, exactly. And I noticed in your book you talk about how Americans find it harder to step back than other countries, and it's very true. Why is America so different?
I don't know. I think, and this is another reason I wrote the book, is I really want to try to change the conversation. I want to change work culture because there's this, I think it comes from a good place. Like, America has always been this place about striving, about a better life. People come here to have a better life, to kind of achieve their dreams. And I think that what's happened is that's transformed into, you've got to compete and you've got to work every single minute, every second to get ahead. And actually, research from Stanford, Harvard, companies, decades of research shows it's actually not true. It's not helpful. Not only is it not helpful, it's really harmful. And there are so many examples. I had to work hard for my book not to be a scientific journal. There's so much overwhelming research on how bad being connected 24/7, working 24/7, running around like a madman with your variety of schedules. And it's not healthy for us, and it's not productive. That's the most important. So you look at a country like Germany. They have 30 full paid vacation days, and yet when you line up the productivity of the average German to the average American, it's pretty much the same. Even though that we're working so much more, so much harder, and I don't think anyone can go and say, hey, a German-made product is inferior to an American's. Normally when you think of a product coming from Germany, you think, oh my goodness, this is really a quality, almost like a luxury good.
Right.
And then an even better example is comparing a country like Germany to Greece. It may shock people that the Greeks actually work tremendously more hours. But who would you assume has the greatest productivity? So I think it's important to understand that hours worked does not equal success. It does not equal greater productivity. And in fact, that is not, you find out through research that's not the case.
And there's some really bad physical responses to not taking the break, and some good physical responses to actually finally taking that hard break, correct?
Yes, it's a physical one. If you want to have a greater chance of injury, if you want a greater chance of getting sick, if you want a greater chance, significantly greater chance of having a heart attack or stroke, you should definitely work more than 55 hours. a week.
Yeah.
Definitely more than 60 if you want to experience more stress in your life. They've actually found that there's no difference between you working 55 and 70 hours. There literally is none. And you can do it for short periods of time, but over the long term, you actually start underperforming. And what's really interesting is more and more of our jobs are around problem solving, coming up with creative solutions, being creative, being innovative, being a real resource. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by reflecting. By actually, you think about the proverbial, idea in the shower that you have, or you're going for a walk and suddenly a solution to something pops in your head. There's actually a tremendous amount of research. And this is, you tie back into your comment about God. And it's like, the latest neuroscience research shows that when you step back and rest or reflect, you think your brain is not doing anything or it's actually slowing down. But actually, they're finding the opposite happens. That your brain actually kicks into gear, and a part of your brain called the default mode network goes into overdrive. And it's the part that tries to piece together information, make patterns. And they find that the most creative people have the strongest default mode network. And it's just so interesting that this would tie into, kind of this thousands of year old commandment that it actually turns out that you can be more creative, more innovative, and more successful. And that's what the latest research is finding at the cutting edge of science.
And what has it done for your faith? Like, how has it affected your faith by taking a real Sabbath and really taking that hard break?
Well, I can tell you is that it's deepened it for me because, when you take a Sabbath, it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything.
Right.
You're just doing stuff that's different. You're carving out a space. And in a way, when you carve it out and you start removing the noise, and, I'll do like one thing or maybe two things on my Sabbath. I won't do my normal, which is like 15 million things. And what you find is that in that space, that you start thinking and asking yourself bigger questions. Who am I? Like, why am I here? Why am I striving? Am I spending the time the right way? Am I leading a good life? And inevitably, those questions pop in, and some of them may be very difficult to answer. But you need to wrestle with those questions. You need to, really dive deep with those questions, because that's what will turn you towards a meaningful life. And inevitably, the spiritual questions will emerge, and you'll ask yourself, what am I doing? So for me, the Sabbath has been like a journey where I never did a prayer practice, really consistent prayer practice. But now, every morning for about 5 minutes, I do a prayer practice. And I can't directly tie it to the Sabbath, but I can tell you is that I don't think I would be doing this if I hadn't realized, my mornings, I have a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, 7-month-old. I have very, like most of us, very busy job schedule. And my mornings are crazy.
Yeah.
But I learned from the Sabbath the importance of carving out time, no matter, even if it's very short. So if I'm able to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just in prayer and thinking of my loved ones, my friends, those are sick and need of healing, and I can do that and just start my day. I don't get to do it every morning. I try. I don't think I would have that without realizing the power of the Sabbath.
Yeah, one of the things I have always had to do when it comes to the Sabbath is I think I have a hard time hearing God, because He doesn't yell at us. He doesn't scream when He wants to talk to us. He speaks in a still, small voice. And I find it as the equivalent as if you're trying to drive, and my kids, of course, my kids are adults now, but, my kids were little, if they were arguing or getting really loud in the back seat and trying to drive, trying to find a location, and them, fighting in the back seat and making a lot of noise. And, it's just when you never turn that background noise off, it's just impossible to hear him. And for me, the Sabbath is, even if I puddle around in the yard or whatever I might do, I find myself being able to hear all of a sudden something I've been praying about. I can hear him now, because I've unplugged enough to hear it. It's finally the background noise is turned down enough, and my attention is free for him to get my attention. It's finally I'm a captive audience finally.
No, I agree, and just a similar thing is I find that on my Sabbath, I actually hear my children and my wife.
Wow.
Where during the week, there's so much going on. It's really hard to hear what they're really telling me or what they're trying to communicate. And I can tell you, I'm sure all of us have had this experience, but when you have your phone on and it's during the week, and I'm trying to either play with my daughter or interact with my sons, and my phone is there, it's a very different interaction when my phone is not there and not on.
Right.
And, even if I turn away for a second, let's say I'm playing with my daughter on the floor, we're playing with toys, and I turn away for a second because my phone has beeped or buzzed or someone's called me, or I wanted to just check it because I'm addicted to it, just like everybody else, is immediately my daughter will be like, even though I'm playing with her, I looked away for 2 seconds, she'll go ahead and say, Pop, can you play with me?
Oh.
And my first reaction is, I am playing with you. And am I really there? And so my interactions are just very, very different on the Sabbath, where there is no distraction. And I'm there and I can really be there and really hear her.
So your book, The Heartbreak, is available now, right?
Well, and actually, it's coming out on May 28th. It'll
May
be
28th.
Officially released on May 28th.
Okay, and so how can
you can pre-order it? You can go on Amazon. You can pre-order it, and or just wait till May 28th.
And how do people find out more about you and what you're doing? Do you have a website or?
So I have a website. It's theheartbreak.com. And you can also have a Facebook page. You can search for me, Aaron M. Edelheit, and it says Aaron M. Edelheit, the author of The Heartbreak. You can also look at me, and I post some articles there and on my website of just interesting things, that I'm writing or I'm finding that's related to the Sabbath. And obviously, if you join Facebook, you're happy to email me questions or stuff you're struggling with. And, not that I have all of the answers, but I've been working on this for, over 12 years, and it's not the easiest thing, but it is definitely one of the most rewarding things you can do.
Yeah, it's a constant journey too. You never really spike the ball until you meet the Father. It's going to be a constant journey of balance. Balance to me is the hardest thing in my spiritual life, is achieving balance, and I certainly can't do that when I don't take a true Sabbath every week. It completely throws me off, and it's amazing that I love this book. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm loving everything about the. I hope everyone takes this to heart. Order the book. It's such an incredible thing. I have struggled with, and I've seen what it's done for my life too. I encourage everyone to read the book and to put these things into practice and see what it does for you, and research everything, on his Facebook and his go to theheartbreak.com and research what it's all about. But it's so incredible. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really trying to spread the message, and I appreciate you help, because I really want to try to change work culture and change how people, think about work and technology. And I really appreciate it.
Well, we will post the interview on YouTube, and we will tag your Facebook, and so you can share that. If you have anybody that wants to hear you personally talk more about the book, they can click on the interview. So Thank you again so much. It's been such a great time talking to you. And well, thank you, Aaron. I'm so glad to have finally talked to you, and I'm enjoying the book just thoroughly.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.